Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
And welcome back, everybody. If you're finding yourself just in disarray, disorganized, you walk room from room in your living space, even your workspace, and you just look and say, this is a mess. I don't know what it is, but no matter what I do, I can't get organized. We're going to offer some help, some tips today on how to get that done. 4 easy steps, by the way, when you're working with her. And she is Huntsville's best professional organizer. Of course, she works outside of the geo of Huntsville, Alabama. And she joins us today. So excited to learn more about the organizational process. Richele Caragianis is on the program. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, and I've been looking forward to this all day.
Same here. I like to think I'm fairly organized, but I'm always learning like little tips, little things to do just to make life easier, make life flow. And I had a friend of mine who's very intuitive, and this is what set me on that path. And I love your feedback on this. And he said to me, when you have things in your path, a box, you got laundry basket over here, and you got to go around everything. You are blocking the flow of energy, and that's putting stress and anxiety on yourself unnecessarily. So that's why you should be organized. What's your feeling for when we've got this stuff in the way in our daily lives?
Well, that resonates with me because I think a cluttered home, a cluttered environment, a cluttered car, keeps the brain cluttered. And we can have a cluttered brain. A lot of people function in that manner, but when you find yourself not functioning in that manner, that's the time to figure out what can I do within my sphere of control, my environment, so that the ultimate goal is an uncluttered mind. And the other big thing is being organized is not about perfectionism. And that's a big thing I always like to put out first. Ultra organized people are not necessarily perfect people. And the same is true, I guess. Disorganized people are not silly people.
I appreciate you sharing that because I lived my life as a perfectionist for quite some time. Even in that room over there, I'm in an office building. That's my office, obviously, studio here. But there's a newspaper clipping from when I was 17 on the wall where I used to draw cartoons, but wanted to be a syndicated cartoonist as well. And the library did, a display. So the paper did a article on that. And actually, there's a quote from me that says, I'm a perfectionist. So I wrote that out for many years until I realized nothing's perfect. Nobody is. But the organizational thing, I kind of paired the two together, just like you're saying, where I would say, yeah, it's got to be perfect. So, that draw needs to be perfect. I'm not like that anymore, but I know where things are. Like if you ask me for something, yeah, I got it right over there. I just find it's better for me. Less stress. Don't have to worry about it. But everybody's got their own reason.
Well, the last thing on that I'll say is my favorite quote on organizing comes from Albert Einstein. And he says, people who need to be organized are just too lazy to look for their shit.
Let me process that.
With my profanity, I apologize.
All good. All good. Wow. Interesting.
So that's the flip side to it. So we can take it lightly is the point. We can take this lightly. It doesn't have to be an overwhelming, overbearing, completely freak me out experience. So here's my 4 steps. All right. And they're not just mine, and I've tweaked them for me, but many organizers come from this exact same place, and that makes them a good organizer. So the first is the purge or the weed, or declutter has become the new word for it. And this is where you go through and you make the decisions about what's a keep and what else goes. And that's the definition in a nutshell of what it is to declutter. What am I going to keep and what is not serving me right in front of me on the coffee table or in the catch-all or on the kitchen counter? What is not serving me by its presence? And does it need to go somewhere else? Does it need to go away?
Hmm.
Does it need to be thrown away? Does it need to be donated away? That's the first step.
You got to put it through that filter.
Got to do it. And it's the hardest step.
Mm.
It's the step that I can't do alone. I'm not going to make those decisions without you. It's the step that I need you by my side, doing it at your own pace and working with me at my pace. It's our first hands-on experience together.
I don't know if I'm jumping ahead here, but we have emotional attachments to our stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So are we still in the first step here where we have to break the emotional attachment?
Well, we have to make a lot of decisions.
Hmm.
You know, a little story of how I got into organizing is that I'm a Katrina person. So I survived Katrina. Not one earthly possession did survive Katrina. And I went from a full 2-bedroom with an office apartment to with three. I went through graduate school. So I had books upon books upon books upon books, journals upon journals upon journals, things that I would have never considered not having anymore. And I went to nothing.
Hmm.
And it was a truly profound experience, life-changing experience for me to see what my relationship to stuff was and how I didn't need it. And I've never replaced those books. I don't journal anymore. I'm not saying anything bad about journaling, but I don't have books of stacks of composition books from journaling. The art I have on the wall is precious to me. And I don't buy things off the cuff. Like I really need them. And I live a much simpler life. And simpler is kind of equates to organized, kind of equates to the uncluttered mind.
Mm.
That's how I got into this. It was
Wow.
huge realization about my relationship to my stuff.
Well, before we go any further, was it Katrina that pushed you into professional organizing? And what were you doing before that?
Well, my classical education is in the theater. And I didn't realize how much I was learning about the organized mind while I was going through my classical training. But I had to get organized really fast, especially as I transitioned off the stage into producing and directing. And if you're not organized, your cast isn't organized, your production crew isn't organized, no one's organized. So I didn't even realize I was picking up these skills. So life changed. I was no longer doing theater professionally. Katrina hit. I went through this experience with my stuff, and then I became a stay-at-home mom. That's a whole other level of
Mm.
I shouldn't say a whole other level. It's just a different the purpose, the motivation is different to be organized. You're not just organizing your brain, you're organizing other people's brains. So that happened. And then it became time to go back to work. And I realized I really get this whole organizing thing. I get what I'm learning from professionals and I get it intuitively.
Interesting. So I want to go there for a moment intuitively. Do you find that you view things differently than people do? Like you look at a room and all the objects and everything, and you're seeing something different than maybe the rest of us are?
Mm-hmm. I'll tell you, the biggest part of my job, and I think it's the part of my job that I do well, is personality management.
Hmm.
Because how we make decisions is driven in large part by our personality. Um, and that drives our relationship to our stuff, our personality, our stuff. It's a reflection.
Yep.
Pictures you hang on the walls, the decorative items you put on the table, all the way down to the sentimental items we choose to hang on to. Baby's first painting, Um, what is another sentimental? Trophies, the kids' trophies. These are all things that you're going to have to make a decision about whether to keep, whether to dispose, whether to donate. And it's tough. And
Mm.
depending on the personality, it can be harder, it can be easier, it can be a struggle. And that's what I'm there for, hopefully.
So I reserved sharing something with you because sometimes when I say it, I get a weird look. But when I said before how when boxes are in front of you, it can block the flow of energy.
Sure.
That came from somebody who is very intuitive. That's their career. That's what they do. Um, and then now we went a couple of layers deeper on the organization side. I've heard that the reason most of us are disorganized is because of our past. So it could be traumas in our past that, is in our subconscious. And when I say traumas, I don't necessarily mean something major. It could be just you got bullied, whatever it might be. But that is causing you to be somewhat disorganized. What are your thoughts on that?
I think not being a therapist, um, it's it's not just whether or not you're organized, it's whether or not you like a lot of color. It's like whether or not you like background noise. Are you someone who needs to have the TV on all the time? I mean, all who we marry, how we raise our children, all of this is influenced by past experiences. I don't think organizing or being a cluttered person is any different. My mother had more stuff than you can imagine. And I think I had a reaction against that.
Hmm.
She was a stuffed person. She didn't have one picture on the table. She had 20 pictures framed beautifully on the table. What picture could you choose to look at? That was my thing. Like,
Wow.
you got me confused from the
Point.
beginning.
Yeah.
Uh, so yeah, I agree. 100%. Like every experience we walk through will, especially to jump to another deeper point, is if there's grief involved, if there's lost marriages, if there's death in the family, loss of parents, loss of a child. A lot of times the hanging on to stuff comes about through loss and grief. And then,
Hmm.
unfortunately, what unfolds, the disorganization occurs, which is the behavioral response. And then the emotional response to that is shame. And I find that the one thing I have to be most sensitive to in my chosen profession is the amount of shame people walk around with if they have a messy house, a disorganized house,
Hmm.
a house that just you haven't touched, you haven't picked up in days or weeks. And there's a lot of shame. Letting me into your home is a huge privilege
Hmm.
to share that with me.
Yeah, it's very personal.
So personal.
Wow. Um,
It's
I-
actually why I created a fifth step. I know we haven't gone through my four, but my fifth step is the sentimentals. And I leave them for the last. If a sentimental piece comes up, I say, put it in that pile over there. If it's sentimental, put it in that pile over there. If it's sentimental, put it in that pile over there. And it's the last thing we deal with because it's the hardest thing to deal with.
so not even close to the Katrina level, but I do understand the down scaling of all of this. I moved two
Mhm.
years ago, downsized, bigger house, smaller situation, and it's very liberating when you purge and get rid of stuff. I again, I consider myself fairly organized, but I got rid of so much stuff, and you realize that I don't need this stuff. I didn't. It's good. Toss it out. Yeah, I held on to a few things, and then I realized paying storage for it, big money, and it came to a point where it was like, that's going. And I actually held on to things that I thought I was going to put in the next house. Um, I was going to recreate what I had done, But then I realized that was that life. This is this life. Facebook Marketplace, come and get it. Sold it, got rid of it, got rid of that storage facility. There is something that to be said about when you downsize and you realize, and I know it's not easy, that you don't need all that stuff. And it kind of feels good to
Oh,
purge.
I think the prolific abundance of storage space like that you rent, lease, to put the extra stuff in.
Sure.
The fact that that has become a billion-dollar industry is
Oh
a
my gosh. Yeah.
direct reflection of Americans' relationship to their stuff.
Yeah.
Because you don't see those locations and facilities in other countries.
You're right. And it's expanding every single day where they're building these. I see them popping up all over the place and they have got it figured out. By the way, side note, I have a marketing company. I do marketing for a storage facility. And that's not where my stuff was. I was paying. And so I did, research on it. These facilities, not the one that I represent because it's a small family-owned one, but the rest of them, which are franchises, and they'll start you at one rate, and 2, 3 months later, they jack you up another $50, and then more, and then more. And there's no otherwise, if you don't like it, come and get your stuff. That's
Yeah,
it.
it's like a bad credit card
Yes, yes. You forget that you're paying over and over again. And let's be honest, when was the last time you went and saw that
and
stuff
saw the
in the
stuff.
storage facility? Right.
Yep,
Mm,
yep.
so true.
Yeah, that's why the decluttering is so important as the first step.
Mm. So
So,
get us into the second step.
okay, so the second step is we've decided what we're going to keep now, right? We know what's going to get thrown in the trash and we know what's going to go to donation. And so what do we have left is we have the keep is what I call it.
Mm.
And so now what we have to do is categorize. I also call that categorizing. We categorize what we're going to keep. And again, that can be stuff that we use every day. That can be the stuff that we only need to touch base with once a month, cleaning, Clorox, things like that. It can be the categories can be by, does it go in my bedroom? Does it go in my kids' room? Does it go in the library? Does it go in the kitchen? It can, so you can categorize by space. But the next step is to categorize what we're going to keep. That's step 2. Step 3 is choosing those containers. You can use acrylic, baskets, iron, weave. You can use pillowcases. It doesn't matter. But we have to figure out what you're going to bring into the home, because that's what you're doing. What are you going to bring into the home to put these categories into? So for instance, under my kitchen cabinet, I have white, durable plastic containers because I'm putting cleaning fluids in them. And so if for any reason there's a spill or anything like that, I don't want to go in all over the place. So it's a bit more durable of a container. In the garage, it's more like bins, like big husky bins that close up. And if for any reason you were to drop them or they were to tip over, they wouldn't break and they wouldn't lose their form and everything in it would be safe. But that's the garage. So choosing your containers can be a very, very important step. But I will say this, it's the one that most people, once they realize that this is actually the step that you're going to have to spend some money beyond me, a lot of people will be like, oh no, I'll just go get boxes from the grocery store, boxes they're not using. And that's fine. Free boxes, free boxes, free boxes. The problem is there's very little uniformity and it can be kind of a step backwards because when you look at it, it looks disorganized because there's not a unified choice of container. But whatever the client wants, the client gets. And then finally is the installation. We decide what kind of containers are going where. We put the stuff in it and we push it back until we need it.
Mm.
And let me just say, I know I'll come full circle back around to the 5th step, which is those sentimentals. And where we put sentimentals, what room, what kind of container. Do we keep any out? Like we choose one hand painting from our child when they were 7, and we decide to frame that and put that up on the wall. And then all the other artwork can go in a climate controlled bin in the garage, accessible, just in case you want to go look through them.
Question on that point, and it's so funny. We had plans of talking about picking one room and attacking one room at a time. We're never going to get to that, but that's all good because we went deeper and for good reason. The sentimentals.
Mm-hmm.
How do you decide which ones not to keep? For example, we talk about, and I had the visual you gave, the handprint. I totally got it. I got it. Literally, I have it
Good.
in a bin. There's a lot. How do you decide what to get rid of? We're in a different situation, different territory right now.
Yeah, and it's the most intense. It's even more intense than the first step because number one, that's the last thing I will ever be held responsible for is accidentally disposing of a sentimental piece. I have a client right now who has 5 china sets, 5 different china sets. 3 of them, though, are heirloom sets. They came down either through her husband's family or they came down through her family. And sometimes it's the set they choose to use if they entertain, but they also have their set. They have their everyday set and they have their formal set from when they got married. But those are sentimental items to them. So the suggestion that I made was, why don't we pick out like some of the larger platters or the salt and pepper shakers, the interesting stuff, not the plates and the bowls, but the interesting stuff. That we'll put out as decorative on a bookshelf or in if you've got a china cabinet in your dining room. And then what we'll do is we'll wrap everything else up in an appropriate and tidy and safe manner, put it in the attic, put it in the basement, put it in the garage, but make it so that if you decide, I want the heirloom set number 3 for this party, you know where it is, it's labeled, and you have access to it. And that's an example of how to handle, pick one out, pick 2 out, and then the confidence that comes with, I know where it is, I know it's safe, and I know I can get to it, I think alleviates the stress of making the decision.
I totally agree.
That was a really long answer. I'm so sorry.
No, but it's a very important one because you don't have those items ever again. I remember cleaning out my mom's garage, maybe, I don't know, 10 years ago. And I was just, not even, it's 5 years ago. And I threw stuff out for my child. There's a teddy bear in the dumpster and other things. And you know what? I mean, it was all beat up. But now I look back and I'm like, you should have saved it because you can show it to your kids and all of that. So that's a tough one. Very careful.
It's why I leave it to the last.
For sure. Yeah. We are out of time.
No.
So, yes, we have more steps to get to next time we get together.
Okay.
I know that you service Huntsville, Birmingham, Athens, areas surrounding there. Can you do this virtually? Let's say this resonates with somebody. Can they connect and can you let's say they walk you through a room and then you walk them through the process?
I think so. As a matter of fact, I think I virtually work myself out of a lot of business because I really want people to make their own decisions. I really want them to come up with their own system, and I really want it to be a system that works for them. And yeah, we can do that, FaceTime, walk around the house with the computer, show me each room, show me what's going on.
Sure.
And then I can have a conversation with them just like you and I are having.
Absolutely. And when we talk about systems, excuse me, I see it in 2 different ways where there's a system for how to get rid of it or keep it, but there's also a system after you've made the decision where it goes and how it's going to integrate into your life. We didn't get to what we wanted to today, so we will next time.
Next time.
I love the way that you run deeper. It's not just, here's how to declutter. There's more going on up here. And this is why we have those attachments. This is why we're cluttered in the first place. Um, Richele, what's the best way to connect with you?
Well, I'm at Richele at blossomwoodorganizing.com. I have a New Orleans area code, but ignore it. The number is 504-432-2271. And I'm Richele Caragianis.
Awesome. And you're amazing. And now I see you still have your phone number from the Katrina days.
I do.
Wow.
It'll be really hard for me to let go of that number.
I gotcha.
Gotcha.
Wonderful having you on here. Looking forward next time we get together.
Yes, sir. Me too.
Thanks.
And hey, this is my tag. Let's get it done.
Help me with that.
Okay.
All right. We'll catch up next time. We'll be right back.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.